Okay guys, this is the video for page 3. I'm sorry I couldn't get the notes on last night. I'm having trouble, so I'm having to do this on my phone holding it. Page 3, our subject is squares and square roots. Our first section talks about squaring a number. So if you look at your notes, the first sentence said, squaring a number is raising that number to a power of 2. We talked about that would be an exponent of 2. That's called the exponent or the power. It gives us an example. For example, 4 squared equals 16. We should know after that little review class I did that because 4 times 4 equals 16, we can say 4 to the second power, or 4 squared is 16. So anytime you take something to the second power, that is squaring that number. Now this is important. When a negative value is squared, be careful to note whether or not the negative side is inside the parentheses, and we can look at this to see the difference. Now, if you notice here, this is a negative 2 squared because it's in parentheses. So that means negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. But if we look at it written the other way, this literally means 2 squared with a negative in front of it. So that's negative 4. This means 3 squared with a negative in front of it, negative 9. 4 squared with a negative in front of it. So here, the negative is part of what you're multiplying. Over here, the negative just gets added on after you multiply. You need to watch for that difference in the math problems that you'll get. Okay, that's the section on squares. That's the notes for that. That should be all you need. Now we're going to go down to this second section about square roots. Okay. Taking the square root is the opposite of squaring a number. So taking the square root. So that would mean that when you're squaring something, you're multiplying it twice. When you're doing the opposite of that, you're trying to find the number that would go the other way. We would take the number and say, well, what do we multiply together to get that number? So for instance, the square root of 16 is both negative 4 and 4 because negative 4 times negative 4 is 16, and 4 squared is 16. So actually, we didn't talk about this much in class, but we have to remember that there are 2 ways to make those. Now, when you use the positive square root, which for 16 would be 4, the positive square root is known as the principal square root. And so when you're using the radical sign, the solution is the positive square root. Okay? So whenever we're using, so it's known as the principal square root. So whenever we're using the square root sign, the solution is the positive square root. Additionally, a number like 16 that we're using as our example up here is also known as a perfect square because its square root is a whole number. Okay? It's not a decimal, it's a perfect whole number. One of the things you'll want to do as we move down to the bottom, I'm going to move down a little bit. These are the perfect squares. I'm going to fill out the first few. I'm going to fill out a few and I want you to fill out the rest. So for instance, 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2, 2 squared is 4. I'm going to do 6 squared is 36. Let's see, 9 squared would be 81 because that's 9 times 9. 12 squared would be 12 times 12, that's 144. I would like for you to fill the rest of those in. Let's see, I'll do 13 is 169. Here, I'll do one more for you. I'll do 8 squared is 64. I want you to do the rest of those, okay? Fill the rest of those in yourself. Okay, we'll drop down here to the square roots, okay? So if we go up here, what number, okay, would have a square root that is 1? Well, 1. because 1 times 1 is 1. What is the square root of 4? It's the number. Okay, we want the principal square root, the positives only. Okay, the square root of 4, because 2 times 2 gives me 4. So 3. What is 3 the square root of? Well, we would put 9. We're just looking at what number. So 3 times 3 gives me 9. So 4. 4 is the square root of 16. What's the square root? Next would be 25, because 5 times 5 is 25. So what it's saying here is, if I give you 6 and say that that's a square root of a number, what number is 6 the square root of? Well, if I multiply 6 times 6, that gives me 36. Let's see, I'll do 12 is the square root of 144. I'll do 81, square root of 81 is 9. I would like for you guys to do the rest. Okay? All right, let's turn over to the back. I'm going to do the examples on the back in a different video. So watch for video part 2, and that'll be doing the examples on the back.